Chapter 6 is looking at social evaluations and social relations, and it asks the question, why do people accept their place in a stratification system, especially when they are at or near the bottom? And you need to know all of these reasons. One answer is that they have no choice. They lack not only wealth and opportunities, but also the power to change their situation. Make sure you know that. But lack of power does not prevent people from rebelling against inequality. Also, many believe that their inferior place in the system is justified by their own failures or by the accident of their birth. Make sure you know that. If people who have good cause to rebel do not do so and instead support the existing stratification system, those who do wish to rebel may feel that their efforts will be worthless. Number 2, make sure you know that another reason people accept their place in the stratification system is that the system itself is a part of their culture. Through socialization, we learn the cultural norms that justify our system of stratification. The rich learn how to act like rich people, the poor learn how to survive, and in so doing, they tactically accept being poor. Women and men learn to accept the places that are assigned to them, and so do the young and the old. We can see the connection between culture and stratification in the interactions of daily life, the way we dress, whether we wear expensive designer clothes, off-the-rack apparel, or secondhand clothing from the Salvation Army says a great deal about our place in the stratification system. But so does the way we speak, as anyone knows who has been told to get rid of that southern accent in order to get ahead. Our efforts to possess and display status symbols, make sure you know that these are material objects or behaviors that convey prestige, but status symbols are encouraged by the billion-dollar advertising industry. Many other examples could be given, but here we're going to concentrate on 2 sets of norms that reinforce stratification at the micro level. These are the norms of deference and demeanor, so make sure you know that. Make sure you know by deference we mean the appreciation that an individual shows of another to that other. In popular speech, the word deference is often used to indicate how one person should behave in the presence of another who is of higher status. Formulas for showing deference does differ greatly within different subcultures. For example, among teenage gang members, there's always ways of showing deference through greeting rituals. Not performing those rituals may cause a gang member to feel disrespected, which can certainly lead to violence. These formulas for showing deference illustrates how our society's stratification system is experienced in everyday life. In the United States, for example, we learn to address judges such as Your Honor. We may feel embarrassed for the plaintiff who begins a sentence with, "Excuse me, Judge." But in most European countries with their histories of more rigid stratification, people who want to show deference go further and address the judge as, say, "Your Excellence." Now, make sure you know that deference is not a one-way process. Irving Goffman pointed out that the act of paying deference to someone in higher status frequently obligates that other person to pay some form of deference in return. For example, high priests all over the world seem obliged to respond to offerings of deference with an equivalent of "Bless you, my son." Make sure you know that the point here is that deference is often symmetrical, in which both participants defer according to their place in the stratification system. Through deferent behavior and the appropriate response, both parties affirm their acceptance of the stratification system itself. Intuitively, we all know this. When we are stopped by a police officer, we may become deferential, using the polite forms of address such as yes sir, no sir, and the like, in order to avoid embarrassment. The officer, in turn, may attempt to find out our place in the stratification system and use the appropriate forms of address in speaking to us. Now, make sure you know our demeanor. This is the way that we present ourselves, such as our body language, dress, speech, and manners. It conveys to others how much deference or respect we believe is due us. Here again, the interaction can be symmetrical. The professor must make the first move toward informality in relationships with students, for instance, but among professors of equal rank, there is far more symmetry. The move toward informal demeanor, such as the use of first names, can be initiated by whoever feels most comfortable in his or her status. On the other hand, asymmetry in the use of names can be used to reinforce stratification, as in an office where the secretaries are addressed by their first names, but they address their supervisor by his or her last name, plus a title such as Mr., Doctor, or Professor. These largely taken for granted aspects of how we carry out or construct social stratification in our social interactions can certainly have huge effects. Make sure you know that failure to carry out the rules of demeanor can cause a person to be labeled deviant and to be cast out of the acceptable strata of society. Deference, demeanor, and other ways in which we behave according to the micro-level norms of stratification further reinforce our sense of the correctness of those norms. In times of rebellion against a society stratification system, those norms are explicitly rejected. During the 1960s, for example, students from wealthy families often wore jeans and tie-dyed shirts in social institutions that would normally call for suits or dresses. Long hair and beards, refusal to wear a bra, and other symbolic acts in violation of generally accepted norms of demeanor were intended to communicate rejection of the society stratification system. Make sure you know what social status refers to. This is collective, subjective evaluations of groups by other members of that society using contemporary standards, values, and beliefs. Status encompasses common terms such as prestige, social standing, respect, disrespect, disdain, or esteem. Make sure you know the difference between blue-collar work and white-collar work. Blue-collar work is manual labor. White-collar work is mental labor. Make sure you know the difference between ascribed prestige and achieved prestige. Ascribed prestige is rooted in socialization, experiences beginning in childhood, and it carries on through the life cycle that teaches each new generation that some occupations have more prestige than others. And achieved prestige is occupations earn prestige on the basis of an evaluation process in which they are ranked on the perceived characteristics of the work. There is an interplay among occupation, education, and income, and lifestyle certainly is also linked to class and social status. Occupational attainments are in part determined by levels of formal educational credentials. Income is correlated with occupational attainments, and of course, income does influence lifestyles. There was a concept that originated in the 1920s to measure whites' willingness to accept racial and ethnic minorities in different social situations. This was known as social distance. The contact hypothesis is a hypothesis that's often predicted that increasing interpersonal contacts among members of diverse groups promotes positive attitudes and reduces intolerance and prejudice.